now going to go to a public hearing. Are we going to go to 7.3, which is a public hearing? We will conduct a public hearing to consider a petition from the Bridge Street History Center to rename the Lake Granbury Conference Center to the new name of the David Southern Lake Granbury Conference Center. We'll have staff give a presentation on this and provide information to the council. I have about 7 people that have signed up. If others want to sign up, now would be the time to speak, and I'll open the
Mayor, Council. As you know, there was a request petition submitted to the council to consider rename the Lake Granbury Conference Center to the new name of the David Southern Lake Granbury Conference Center. That petition states many facts about David's life as a council member, a mayor, and as a committee member or a board member with the city for over about 50 years of service of his life. And so the requests come from the Bridge Street History Center to rename the conference center in honor of Mayor David Southern. I think that the memo is pretty explanatory, but for those in the audience, I just want you to know that we've worked with this group for about 9 months to get to where we are. We didn't want this to become some kind of a political item, and they were gracious enough to wait till after the election to submit the petition. We thank you for that. We look forward to comments and concerns or whatever y'all may have. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. I would like to note that a private donor has offered to fund the cost, so there will be no cost to the city or to the History Center. How that fleshes out, we'll work that through. It'll either be a reimbursement to the city or to the Bridge Street Center. However the donor wants to provide those funds, and be tax deductible for them either way. Be happy to answer any questions you may have. And I did put some exhibits in there that we worked with a sign company to kind of see how it would look. I think that you can see there may be some difference by the time we actually get it built, get the sign built and installed, but that's the gist of what's been requested. So obviously the sign company has a lot to do with the final rendition of how it would be. And somewhere the cost is somewhere between $13,000 and $15,000, we think. So, any questions?
council. Do you have any questions before we open up the public hearing? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Sorry. Okay. I have Ms. Dominique Ng, who has signed up to speak. If you could come to the podium, state your name and address. And I think you have 5 minutes of time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
And gentlemen of the City Council. It is my honor and privilege to address you this evening on the subject of renaming the Conference Center to the David Southern Lake Granbury Conference Center. And I would like to give you a few reasons. David Southern was our longest serving mayor, and during his terms he accomplished many things, and I would like to cite a few of those as highlights. He was in fact a visionary, a gifted leader, an astute businessman, an urban planner, and his vision was always to promote Granbury. His multiple terms as mayor, his achievements, the so-called $1 million parking lot, has been an enormous boost to Granbury. And as I live in proximity to it, I can tell you that it is used extensively, almost daily. And so that $1 million, I feel confident, was amortized by usage alone. Many of his achievements were actually at the risk of re-election. I would like to point out that we owe this beautiful building, this City Hall, to David Southern. As I go back into the hinterlands of memory, I recall the days when the City Council meetings were held in a building, I think it was a furniture store nearby, and the councilman had folding tables with metal chairs. There was nothing like this, and the audience was also seated in folding metal chairs. There were maybe 8 or possibly a dozen of the folding chairs there against a wall. That was where city council meetings were held. I remember them well. So these beautiful chambers are owing to David Southern's vision to have a city hall right in the center of town. And it was a controversy at the time of where to locate it. But he knew, as an urban planner, that to have a building like this in the center of town was very, very important. And right near the county courthouse, so all of the government offices could be adjacent. And to have a building such as this where the administrative offices, community development, utilities, and at the time the police department was in this building. It has since later moved because they outgrew the space. The tourist office was also on the east end of that original part of the building, and they have now moved because they outgrew the space. We owe this beautiful building to him. The conference center, of course, is a case in point, and I would like to point out that it was David Southern's business acumen and his exceptional negotiating skills that helped to achieve that. It took 11 years for that to be accomplished. He did work with a committee, but it was largely his negotiating skills that made it possible. And it has been an enormous tourist attraction with the Hilton Garden Inn and the conference center adjacent, where corporate retreats, conferences are held. It's been a huge tourist attraction. And the boardwalk right there on the lake, it was an enormous achievement. David Southern was a passionate supporter of historic preservation, and he did everything he could to support the efforts and the beautiful homes that are here. During his term, there was the candlelight tour of homes that was started, another tourist attraction. He saw the possibilities of Granbury and what it could become.
Miss Ing, they're going to be all over me if I let you continue talking. Could you?
May I?
Please, yes.
May I
Thank you.
just say that he also was a supporter of the arts, and he began what was called the Granbury Mayor's Choice Award for the Rio Brazos Arts, where the mayor could choose a work of art that would then be displayed in City Hall for the public to view. It was wonderful. The no smoking ordinance, a breath of fresh air for us all. And I might just say that when I first came to Granbury, Texas was not even on the Doppler radar. Now it is. Another point that Mayor Southern was very proud of, and it was, I believe, in about 2006, the Wall Street Journal published an article about Granbury. This was on the front page above the fold, and the Wall Street Journal characterized Granbury as a micropolis, and the word spread that word was coined by the Wall Street Journal. Actually, I think it existed before, and the Journal just revived it. And they used the term to describe a city that was a big little city near metroplex that had so many of the amenities that a larger city would have. I remember David Southern was enormously proud of this article. I'm sure it's in the city's archives to read. With your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, I would like to end my remarks with an anecdote that was told to me by David Southern himself. I'm sure we will all remember his resonant baritone voice, which he was able to call up when he needed to have just a little extra measure of authority. Well, the occasion for this anecdote was the Granbury Opera House. It was a social event there, and David Southern and I were having an animated conversation about actors and acting. And he told me that in high school, he had been in a senior play. So I asked him, "Oh, what role did you play?" And he said, "The voice of God." This concludes my remarks, and I hope that you will approve this measure. I give you my full and unreserved endorsement. I believe this would be a tremendously important tribute to David Southern. Thank you for your consideration.
I'm not sure what is going to be harder tonight, me saying, please, Ms. Ng, would you hurry it up, or any of you who want to follow her. So I have Mr. Tom Hamilton, Dr. Tom Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a director of the Bridge Street History Center, I've been asked to represent the center in requesting the council to approve the nomination of the change of name of the conference center. And Dominique did such a fantastic job of describing Dave's accomplishments. I just echo the things that she says, and we have quite a turnout here in favor. I would just like to ask the people that are in favor of this nomination to stand, please.
Oh my.
So I hope you can see we are firmly in favor of this resolution and hope you will honor it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Ms. Peters, you gave up your time, really?
You know how hard that is for me?
I know. I'm enjoying every minute of it. Ms. Faye Landon?
I've lived in Hood County about 10 years. I've lived in the city 6, and I think I have attended nearly every city council meeting for the last 6 years, but there's only been 2 times where I have spoken at a city council meeting that I can remember. I don't even remember what the other one's about. But I'm here tonight to support naming the conference center after David Southern. His name was one of the first names I heard when I moved to Granbury. I heard he was a mover and a shaker. And let's see. David did so much for our town during the times that he was served, and our many nonprofits. I know he donated so much to nonprofits, and we've greatly appreciated those. His generosity speaks volumes. Therefore, I recommend renaming the conference center after him. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landon. Ms. Mary Haddix? Three minutes.
No one could outspeak Dominique, and I echo everything she said. David loved his Lord. He loved his Claudia, Allison, and Jack, and his grandchildren. And then he loved Granbury. And he devoted his life's work to the improvements that we now enjoy. He was my friend, and I would be so proud for him to have this conference center renamed. It was one of his dreams. And now I want to thank our city manager, Chris, because when I first came, heartbroken after David passed, to talk to Chris about David, he said, well, you know, Mary, we don't have any guidelines or any written anything to allow us to name anything after anyone in the city. It has never been done. But he said, I'm going to take that challenge. I'm going to take it to the mayor, and I'm going to take it to the council and see if we can get some guidelines approved so that in the future we can honor such people as David. And of course, there are others that, I'm looking at you, Julia, but there are others that deserve some sort of recognition. And Chris, I thank you for getting that job done. I know it was a lot of work on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haddix. Mr. Richard Haddix.
It's a hard act to follow, to get up here behind your wife and talk about things like this, and I echo everything that everyone said, and I too want to thank Chris and Dr. Hamilton and of course Maurice Walton and all the people that have contributed to this coming to us tonight. But when I moved to Granbury, it wasn't high on people's list to move here. There was a lot of problems, and wasn't the most glamorous place in the world, had a lot of shortcomings. And everyone remembers the furniture store and the PD being upstairs, and we just had a closet upstairs in the attic of the furniture store for a PD. We didn't have any resources whatsoever. And one of the first people I met, of course, was David and Claudia. They welcomed me in. I became an ambassador, I think, to Granbury through the service that they gave. Shook hands with Rick Perry, George Bush, Laura Bush, many, many people that they personally brought into Granbury and opened their eyes to the beauty that we had here. David was a lot of fun. He was just a joy in my life. He was my friend. And I just want this council to recognize the fact that David loved this community. He loved these people. He loved me. He loved his family. But more important to you, he loved this town, and he touched everything in it. If you stop and think about it, how beautiful it is that David Southern was here. That $1 million parking lot that he took so much heat for it has been worth $1 million to this community. I would pay it myself if I could afford it, and hope that this city would appreciate what David did. That Civic Center was a hellhole back when I moved here. It was the ship's wheel, and we got a lot of business out of the ship's wheel. PD did, and it was an abandoned marina with gas tanks buried, and it was on the market for pennies at the time because of its pitiful shape. But with a vision and with the acumen and the pride and the hope and optimism that David had, you can look at what we have now for it. He did so many things like that. He took this city from where it was to where it is. We should recognize him for it. We should be grateful for the service he gave. And on behalf of my friend, I ask that you do that tonight.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. And Mr. Mickey Parsons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Mickey Parsons. I live at 1115 Mallard Way here in the big city of Granbury. I had the privilege of serving on council with Mr. Southern for a while. David was a real friend of mine, and we had a lot of good times and a lot of work in serving the city. A couple of things that haven't been talked about tonight. I've often thought that one of the best assets the city has is the right to 10,600 acre feet of water in the BRA system. We eventually got a saltwater treatment plant to process that water, and I think in the summer it's producing something like 5 million gallons a day, can go up to 10 million gallons. But back in 1994, Mr. Southern was here to advocate for us, for the city, acquiring the rights to that Brazos River water. And then for a number of years, we went where we were paying pretty good money for water rights that we weren't using. But for a long term, 50, 60 years, 70 years, that's going to be one of the best assets the city ever has. Quick comment about the $1 million parking lot. Most people really didn't understand that there was an economic development potential by the city buying that. Now that's called Granbury Square Plaza. That facility became usable because of the purchase of that parking lot. Also, another great event, or another event, was the Opera House. The Opera House was originally built by the community, operated by the community, and somewhere in there, the community, the leaders of the community that were working in there decided to really expand the Opera House. Well, it expanded and spent more money than it could recapture. So David led us as City Council to go in and purchase the Opera House into the city. We knew that that particular building with that Opera House in it was very important to the vitality of the city. And we purchased that building, and then eventually it became the beautiful Opera House that we have today. So I'm in support of the petition presented by the Bridge Street Museum, and I will tell you that the way we ended up with that was because of David Southern. He worked with the citizens that were on that street that had assets that they wanted to give to the city, and David created that Bridge Street Museum building and was a large part of the beginning and the success of that. And I want to thank my friends on the Bridge Street Museum for their efforts and thank them for bringing this petition forward. I support it. Please vote for it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That's everyone that we had sign up to speak, minus one. Thank you, Ms. Peters. It does not go unnoticed that we all, sitting up here, stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us, and it's a pleasure to look out in the audience and know that there's so many shoulders out here that we have been allowed to stand on to get to where we are today in this beautiful city. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public session, and I'll ask, is there any other comments or questions that we have from the council? Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah, Mayor, I was just sitting here trying to think of some comments, and what I hear, and hopefully I say this correctly, David Southern's one man. He was supported by the council at his time, and when I went back there and looked at the pictures that were hanging, there's 28 photos up there of city council, and he's in 11 of those photos. And I just want to say that he had a lot of people in his life as he grew up to shape and influence him. And throughout his life, he picked up an attribute of service, to serve others, to serve his family, to serve his friends, and also his community. He served as a council member, a mayor, and as a board member on several of the city boards, even up until his day. Having his name on the conference center is the least I can do. He served 10 years on council, 15 years as mayor, and also many other years as a board member. It is hard to sit up here and just give him that recognition. I mean, he deserves more, and that's all I got to say now.
Mr. Bale?
Mayor, obviously we had a lot of people here tonight. Thank you all for coming. I spent quite a bit of time on this agenda item. Any time you make a decision on something, you kind of look at what you're doing. We're setting a precedent, and that's important to think about as you look at these things. I think as everybody knows, there's a plaque on the conference center today with the council and city staff that were responsible for the construction of the Lake Granbury Conference Center in 2008. David was the mayor up until he left office in 2010. And as Mary Attic said, on February the 7th of 2023, the City Council developed a policy which was necessary to establish some kind of uniform procedure for the name and renaming of any street or any other city-owned facility, park, etc. And as you read back through that document, there's 5 guiding principles, and there's 4 criterion to consider when naming individuals. And that document is available to you. As you know, we just celebrated our annual Founders Day Jubilee. It was previously known as General Granbury's birthday. Still kind of controversial. However, that was changed by HGMA several years ago. And apparently still a point of contention with some. The event is really, in my mind, to celebrate the people, the founders of our community, and who put this town together. These are the people that made a difference in the early and continued development of Granbury as we know it today, and a lot of conversation around, what it looked like well before I got here a decade ago. And while I think we all contribute to the community, there's always a few people that always stand out. People that have made a difference over time, and people that show up, and people that are extraordinary contributors to things. We have streets named after some of them. You can go through your head and kind of think about which ones those are. A hotel, we have houses named after people. Our football field is named after an important individual in our community. So it does happen. I had the opportunity to meet and talk with David over the years, and Claudia as well. He had a passion for our community. I think that's been said here tonight. He served not only on city council and mayor, but he continued his involvement, even after office, serving on boards and commissions, and always being involved in our community until he left office, as I said, in 2010. And as I read back through the 5 guiding principles and the 4 items to consider when naming individuals, I think David certainly meets those criteria from my perspective. And I think this is shared by at least a half dozen people that I talked to personally about this, and some of you are here tonight in this room. So, Granbury is where Texas history lives, and I hear that every Friday from Dan Vandenberg at Rise and Grind. And I think you can see David's hand in many projects in our city, from the Conference Center, City Beach, City Hall, Moments in Time, et cetera, et cetera. And I think David is one of those individuals that helped shape the history for the betterment of Granbury. So, thank you.
Other comments, council? Greg? Still over there? No?
I need to add something.
Mr. Kaufman?
So for clarification, let me read something to you out of our policy. By the way, it's a policy, not an ordinance of law. It's policy. City council adoption. So the city attorney brought this up to me, and I think it deserves mentioning and addressing and moving on. So renaming existing streets, facilities, parks, and features. The city shall publish in the official newspaper record, shall send notification letters to impacted properties as required by city ordinance, state statute, and shall hold a public hearing on proposed name change. Following the public hearing, the city council may adopt a resolution officially renaming a street, facility, park, or feature. There's also another sentence or two about new streets, facilities, parks, and features and requirements for that. But I did not post any letters anywhere because the city owns this property. And we did post the public hearing as required by law. If you rename a street, it is a technical issue where you have to notify every property owner on that street of the name change by certified mail as required by state law. In this situation, there's not a need to do that for the impacted property owners because it's the city. There's not another organization impacted by the name change other than the city. So I just want to bring that out. I'm fine with moving forward with your action, whatever you want to do tonight. But if you have a desire to do something different than what I've done, I would encourage you to step up. Again, this is a policy. It's not a law, but it is a process that we adopted. And I didn't feel like a letter was needed to be notified any property owner because everything there is the city-owned property. Across the street, we have the Hewlett Park, we have a realtor and a couple of retail shops, but I don't see that that impacts them in any way at all. If we were renaming that street, you would have an issue. But with a word of caution, I just wanted to bring that out, that the city attorney, I just stumbled into that sentence, and he brought that to my attention, and I thought it would be wise to at least discuss it tonight and let y'all understand that. So if you have a need to have me do more notification to somebody, please direct me to do so, and we can delay this if we need to. But that's kind of where I'm at.
That sounds like you're being very transparent.
Yes.
Yes, I think so. Council, do you have comments or questions on this? Do you? I suggest that we continue to move on. Anybody want to object? No? We did close the public hearing. That was a question that I had over here. So with that, does anyone want to make a motion that we rename the Lake Granbury Conference Center to the David Southern Lake Granbury Conference Center?
Mayor,
Mr. Corrigan.
I'd like to make the motion that we approve the petition from the Bridge Street History Center to rename the Lake Granbury Conference Center to the new name of the David Southern Lake Granbury Conference Center, as stated.
Second.
And Mr. Vale seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. I believe that will pass 6-0. Thank you.